Your Excellency, the Governor of Enugu State, represented by the SSG Secretary to the State Government, Professor Onya, you're very welcome. The Governor of Anambra State, former Governor of Anambra State, represented Chief Willie Obiano, represented by Professor Willie Okoye. Your Excellency, the Ambassador of Kenya to Nigeria, Isaac Parashina, Your Excellency, you're very welcome. Please, please, please permit me, and obviously, Your Excellency, the President of Ohaneze Ndibo Worldwide, Senator Azuta Mbata, you're very welcome, sir. Please, please permit me to stand on all due and existing protocols. I think we've established protocols extensively, and we're probably about an hour and 15 or an hour 30 minutes late. So all the government agencies here present, regional development commissions here present, recall that when you look at the agenda, today is to open the technical session, right? So when I look at the room, I see people who came to contribute their ideas and into developing the Southeast Vision 2050 development plan. Tomorrow is for political and institutional stakeholder alignment. So we'll do that tomorrow. But for today, I think we need to get ready and get to business very quickly. So permit me, Your Excellency, the Vice President represented by the SSA, forgive me, but please, let's proceed. Forgive us. We're all Christians or Muslims, so we'll make mistakes, and the onus is on us to forgive. So for us, today marks the technical opening of this forum. We begin deliberately with ideas, evidence, and structure, before politics, before ceremonies, and before declarations. That choice is intentional, because if we are serious about the future of Southeast, then the work must start with clear thinking, honest diagnosis, and coordinated planning. Let me state this clearly at the outset. The purpose of this forum is simple: to move the Southeast from fragmented effort to coordinated action. For decades, development planning across our country has often followed a familiar pattern. Consultants are engaged, documents are procured, validation workshops are done in the nicest hotels, and then plans are launched. And yet, ownership of those plans remains very shallow. Implementation is weak, and public trust is limited. We have chosen a different path at SEDC. Over the past year, the Southeast Development Commission has spent time listening, mapping constraints, engaging states, and stress testing assumptions. Many of the questions guiding today's session emerge from that work. The forum is therefore not about unveiling a finished plan. It's about co-creating one. Every participant here, physically and virtually, is not an observer, but we are all contributors. The ideas generated in these rooms will directly shape the Vision 2050 plan and the framework, its priorities, and ultimately its execution pathway. This process is fully aligned with the renewed hope agenda of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, particularly its emphasis on productivity, infrastructure, private capital mobilization, institutional reform, and inclusive growth. The Southeast Vision 2050 is conceived not as a parallel ambition, but as a regional expression of a national development direction, one that places long-term planning, investment readiness, and execution discipline at the center of our growth. For our business leaders, entrepreneurs, and investors in this room, including those joining us from across the diaspora, let me say this clearly: this process is not academic. The intention is to surface real, bankable projects, clarify policy and regulatory bottlenecks, and build a credible pipeline that can attract domestic capital, diaspora capital, and institutional finance to develop the Southeast. Vision 2050 must ultimately translate into factories, farms, infrastructure, power, logistics, skills, jobs, and sustainable returns. If it does not, then it has failed. To our professional bodies, technical experts, practitioners, your standards, data, and lived experiences matter deeply here. This plan must be rigorous, evidence-based, and implementable. I also want to especially acknowledge the women and young professionals present today, as well as those joining us virtually from across the world. Your perspectives are not peripheral to this process. They are central to it. A vision that does not work for women and youth will not work at all. The Southeast diaspora is one of its greatest strategic assets. The presence of Igbo professional groups who have traveled from different parts of America to be here, alongside those participating virtually from Europe, North America, Asia, and beyond. It sends a powerful signal. Your skills, your networks, your capital, and your global exposure are not add-ons to this process. They are integral to this process. So over the next few days, we'll interrogate difficult questions. How do we industrialize with very limited land? At 29,000 square kilometers, where if we were a state in the Southeast, we will be the 13th largest state. So you have states like Niger State that are 2.6 times larger than the Southeast. So when you think about infrastructure deployment, you think about education policy, you think about land administration policy, in 29,000 square kilometers, we have perhaps 5 different policies, but there are larger land masses that have just one. And all of this has implications for ease of doing business, for the business environment, but also from a deployment of infrastructure standpoint. We have a very small land mass, so there's need to actually have coordinated planning around how we put in place and utilize the land. Other questions such as how do we power growth sustainably? Everyone is setting up power regulatory commissions. Fantastic and splendid idea. Is it possible for 5 states to have 800 megawatt plants each individually? We're all going to raise capital from the same pool of capital. So perhaps if we can all speak to ourselves, come up with credible projects that plays a role and gives everybody their own equity and their stake, perhaps we start to look at projects that have scale and then become more bankable and easier to deploy. How do we finance development at scale? Very good question. If we add all the resources captured in the budget, we know that on average you have 20 or 30%, at best 50% budget implementation. You're really looking at about $2 billion. But we have aspirations. The World Bank says $100 billion for Nigeria in terms of infrastructure deficit. In the Southeast, they say it's $10 billion for infrastructure deficit, a study. But at best, we are using about $2 billion as a region to pay salaries, to pay overheads, to fix security, and then also to build prosperity around industries. But at the same time, we have $22 billion of remittances coming in to Nigeria. From our estimates, just about $4 billion of that comes into the Southeast. The question is, why is that being fragmentally invested? Why isn't that going into one power project, one rail project, one gas pipeline initiative? This is just some of the thinking that we need to spend time reflecting on as we get ready to contribute to the different panels. And the last question is, how do we build institutions that outlive individuals? Extremely important question. We have seen good administrations come and go many times in our region and across the country and across Africa per se. But real transformation is when it is sustainable, where with or without the person who's at the helm of activities, the institution continues to run and continues to deliver value. Questions again for us to think. So the success of this forum will not be measured by speeches or attendance numbers. It will be measured by clarity, alignment, and follow-through. Where is Edani, the SEDC liaison officer? I will say a little conversation we were having over the last 1 week. He said, MD, We can't fill this hall. Oh. We have to find a way to mobilize so that we have 3,500 people here. But for us at SEDC, and for us as Southeasterners meaning every Nigerian who lives here, what we want is 200 people who are ready here to contribute to the development of a plan versus a full hall of 5,000. And if I pick up the mic, they say, Mark for MD, we vote him next year. All of these people will walk out. So what we want to do is to create the right ecosystem and environment that allows every single person here have collective ownership in what we are building. Government is the administrator. Our job is to take your ideas, your aspirations, your contributions, and piece that out, working closely with the different state governments into a plan that we have ownership into. Because when implementation of that plan comes, and there's a role for us to either invest in it or make some sacrifices, it becomes easier. So to close, I encourage everyone here to engage openly, constructively, and generously. Challenge assumptions. Share practical ideas. What is a practical idea? No, I don't think this is how they should do power. I think this is a better project to do. That's just a dream. I think we should do a project that has a 500 megawatt plant. Funding can come from here and there. These are organizations that are interested. That is a brief that living here we can work on. So no idealistic aspirations, focused, pragmatic contributions. So let's think regionally, even while we continue to act locally. If we do this right, the Southeast Vision 2050 will not be another document. It will become a shared roadmap owned by government, business, professionals, the diaspora, the faith-based organizations, the women, the youth, and the wider stakeholder group of the Southeast and Nigeria. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for believing that the Southeast is worth planning together. I wish us all productive deliberations. Thank you very much.